Central government should be the people that borrow money on the international markets, because central government is the biggest, most trusted unit in the country to do that. But local government is where we should be trusting the delivery of these projects, the instigation of these projects, the design of these projects.
If I can invite the panellists to come up and join us on the stage, please. That would be brilliant. Thank you, Michael. We're going to hear from two of the authors who unfortunately couldn't make it today. Andy Street, who has been a real champion, as Michael said earlier on, and Robert, for the West Midlands. He is in the West Midlands today, so therefore he has recorded a message. And also, not only is there a vote in Parliament tonight, well, some might be voting, some might not be, there is a Council of Europe meeting going on at the same time as well. So Sally Ann Hart has just recorded a video which she'll play in a second. I just want to also say to my team, who have just asked whether or not I was having a heart attack earlier on the stage for losing my breath, I wasn't. I just ended up pulling a muscle by carrying about 140 books into this room earlier on. So I am in quite a bit of pain, so I'm going to go that way and find some painkillers whilst you listen to Sally Ann and also to Andy, and then I'll hand over straight over to Robert. Thank you.
I'm really, really pleased to have been able to contribute to this new book on levelling up. My chapter is about levelling up in coastal communities. We all know what the challenges are for coastal communities, and I'm here in lovely St Leonards in East Sussex, and we know what our challenges are, but I also wanted to highlight what the opportunities were in our coastal communities, because levelling up is not just about facing challenges, but also about grabbing those opportunities, and our coastal communities can really grab those opportunities with the right focus and support.
Hi there, Andy Street, Mayor of the West Midlands here, one of the contributors to the book that you are reviewing today. So really sorry I can't be with you for your event, but frankly you need to hear from Michael Gove, not from me. He is the driver of levelling up across the country. But I've been really pleased to contribute to this because it's an important work on a critical subject. And thank you, of course, to Cllr for commissioning all of this, and of course to Sir Robert Buckland for driving it through. Huge issue, critical to voters right across the country. This country remains so unbalanced. It's what drove me to get into politics locally. The country as a whole, and indeed this place, can be better off in all regions. The West Midlands, the North West, everywhere performs better. Lots of brilliant ideas in the book. Thank you, enjoy your event, and I hope some of them can turn into reality under Michael's guidance.
Great, with the words of Andy Street ringing in our ears, we're ready now to launch the panel discussion. I think well, they might need an introduction to some of you. They certainly don't to me, but I've got from my left, I've got Bim Afolami, member for Hitchin and Harpenden, and the Tiggerish outlook of Bim Afolami is something that needs to be bottled and reproduced across Parliament. He's a great colleague and I love working with him. And then equally Katherine Fletcher, Member of Parliament for South Ribble and former Minister who really speaks for the North in a very, very powerful way. I'm delighted to welcome her. And then Jane Stevenson. I'm not going to repeat Michael's attempts at describing her as a wolverine, is what I'm going to call her tonight. She's a wolverine, and she's also a tremendous singer. She's a trained opera singer, but tonight she will not be regaling us with arias, sadly. Maybe later in the bar, but she is notoriously difficult to persuade to use her wonderful voice. And then finally we have Sam as well with us, who's already been introduced, I think, absolutely brilliantly by Michael. And it's great to have, oh, I've done something to this, and I'm now, this is great. I don't know what I've done. I don't know what I've done to this. And do you know what? I'm going to, that was levelling up in action. Hey! Very well done. Have you got that on film? Yeah. And I'm going to never work with children, animals, or moving parts. My God. Oh, thank you, Ben. Oh, am I safe to come? Oh.
We need the clip.
Pressed a button, apparently. I'm terribly sorry about that. Sorry. I was trying to introduce the leader of Buckland District Council, Sam Barkworth-Allen, but it's going down too low now. It's too low. Good God. Right, okay. No, it'll do. No, that's... You've done very well. Lovely assistant, Debbie McGee. Yes, indeed. I entirely agree with you. She's a great dancer, you know, Ben. Great dancer. Anyway, I digress. Shall we begin? Are you sitting comfortably? Shall we begin? Then we'll begin. I will take bits from the floor. Any questions for our excellent panel? Yes, sir. The mic is coming to you. We have the roving mic.
Hi, I'm Ari. I'm a first-year student at UCL, and my question is, how do we level up the rest of the United Kingdom without accidentally levelling down London, especially considering some of the highest rates of deprivation are in London, like Tower Hamlets and Newham, where I'm from?
Right, okay, the big question about choice. Catherine, do you want to give it a go?
I will give it a start and say it's in nobody's interest to level down London. We might genially take the mick out of it occasionally because in our sometimes rare public transport in the north of England, we do enjoy talking to each other as opposed to kind of scowling and looking forward. But on a serious note, what was called the Northern Powerhouse, but the ex-industrial areas where Michael so articulately talked about it, it is in your interests to give us a fishing rod, not a fish. We're not asking for a handout, which perhaps been public policy previously. What can we give them that will keep them happy? We are the biggest untapped economic opportunity this country has because London is busy and tight, which is why nobody talks to each other on the tube. And we have space, and we have skills, and we have capability, and we have pride and passion and a historic track record of being able to do it. And actually, there's a much more practical reason why it's not about doing London down, is because London is if not one of the most preeminent financial capitals in the country. So I've spent my time having a cheeky Marlborough Light on Gresham Street as I came up through the business world. London Wall, it's very nice. But I was working along with business bankers and corporate bankers, and I understand wholeheartedly how important they and their insight and skills and capabilities are in getting great ideas off the ground or financing the National Cyber Centre that's going to happen in Lancashire, or making sure that the business park works well. And my chapter is actually almost a paean to London's virtues, which is it to say, please, could we just think a little and get a little bit of what London and the South East has in transport connectivity, because you can get from Tower Hamlets to, where's the poshest place in London? I don't know, Berkeley Square. You can get there via public transport, but my guys in Preston at the moment will struggle to get to a national cyber centre, because what's been happening is the buses have been. Stop me if I'm going on too long, but what's been happening is our trains got done by beaching. We've got spinal access back into the large structures. You know, I can get to Jane, but it's on the way to London. We don't have great east-west connectivity, and we have very poor local connectivity. So if you're a bit of a Jack the Lass and you're starting out kitchen fitting, but actually you probably should have paid more attention at school, and you want to take advantage of the lifetime skills guarantee, which is another aspect of levelling up policy that's important. You know, Michael was very modest in his achievements in Department of Education. If you haven't got an A-level or equivalent, this government will help you get that qualification. But if you're kitchen fitting, the only way you can get to the job is if the guy picks you up in the transit van. There's no public transport option. If you want to get to that training opportunity, you cannot get there. And realistically, what actually happens if people are driving Mickey Finn motorbikes or an uninsured 3 Series Beamer that they've bought for 500 quid? Close that gap, not necessarily through larger transport infrastructure, but for smaller schemes. And the thing that resonated with me very heavily, and I think is one of the answers to the transport chapter, is about devolving that accountability, that local knowledge, to county councils, Lancashire County Council, Local County Council deal, all the mayoralties, because they know where the talent is, where the jobs are, and where the education are, and can join up those dots.
Thank you, Catherine. You see, it all comes back to buses. If you ask any question, Catherine will tell you about buses. But she's right about it. Damn right. Now, does anybody else on the panel want to contribute to
Just
that?
very
quickly, Jane.
A very
and then we
quick
come
word.
to
I support absolutely what Catherine just said about transport and connectivity, because it is appalling in certain bits of Wolverhampton as well. I did live for a number of years in southeast London in a pretty deprived bit, renting a flat there. I think my chapter in the book is unashamedly parochial and very focused on Wolverhampton. But that model is transferable to other places. But I think the important thing about levelling up is that every place will have its specific needs, and those are very, very different across the country. So Mayor Khan should be on this. You know, this is the powers that he has should absolutely be dealing with levelling up in the capital, as Andy Street is in the West Midlands.
Great, thanks, Jane. Very patient.
May I just point out that it turns out the 18th of February is the day of levelling up, should we need one to commemorate it, because Jane and I are birthday twins on the 18th of February.
All right, blue plaques at the ready, everybody.
Ready,
I'm going to come down to the front row. Right, you're very patient. Yes, sir.
My name is Martin Wright, and I live in Nadine Dorris's constituency, and I'm a Conservative member. We seem to be in the news quite a bit. I'm not quite sure why. I hoped to ask the question to Michael, but obviously he was busy this evening. And I would say to him, if we were looking at levelling up, look at Germany in the late 1990s, early noughties, about what they did, which was incredible. We have this great vision, we have this great project in this country of HS2, and I regret to see the government pushing back on this. We started off in the Industrial Revolution with a Y-shaped railway, a Y-shaped canal system developed into a Y-shaped railway. The infrastructure is Victorian, it's creaking. We need HS2 to deliver people around the country, and it is my regret that there was a pushback on it. It is the greatest construction project in the UK at present, and I think we should be going full speed on it. And if you want a demonstration of how effective railways are, go and have a look at the Elizabethan line, already hitting targets in less than a year. I stopped at Leicester South services yesterday. If you've got an electric car, you've got no chance of recharging it. We haven't got the power stations. We haven't done nuclear power.
Question, please, sir.
What's happening? What are we doing on HS2?
Thank you very much.
It's a crime.
Thank you. Bim?
Where in Mid-Beds are you? I live in Lower Stondon. Very exactly. Very near me indeed. Exactly. Look, there are two things that you said that I think are really important. The first is the main point you made about HS2. And you are completely right about the boneheadedness of successive generations of administrators and politicians of both parties and of all persuasions in this country about not wanting to push forward quickly major infrastructure projects. Thameslink was the same, Crossrail was the same, and in both of those instances they got done, but not after, or rather much later than they should have been done. And HS2 is another example of that. Now, I've got no doubt that HS2 eventually will be done, but why on earth should it take so much longer than it takes elsewhere? And this connects me to the second thing, which is it's about having a focus not just on public spending, but about the efficacy of delivering things on the ground. In Whitehall, we are woefully bad at micromanaging these huge projects, not giving local areas sufficient responsibility, regarding them as obstacles to what we're trying to achieve, this great project that we're trying to achieve from London, and then lo and behold, nothing happening on the ground fast enough. And of course, what does that do? It raises the cost of the capital, it raises the political cost of everything happening, and it is infuriating because we need this infrastructure. But what I would also say, and this is always, I say slightly provocatively, with me having said I completely agree with you as I do, is I was doing question time must have been a couple of months ago, and HS2 came up, and we were doing it. I was in just outside Greater Manchester, and someone asked about HS2, and I said we should have HS2, and the reaction of many people in the audience, surprisingly, was, well, HS2 is a bit of a white elephant. What about the buses? What about the east-west connection? What about all sorts of more local projects? And the difficulty is, it's almost as if we have to deliver some of the easier stuff more effectively and more affordably so that people can trust that we can do the bigger stuff. And a big part of that is about how we trust local government. Central government should be the people that borrow money on the international markets, because central government is the biggest, most trusted unit in the country to do that. But local government is where we should be trusting the delivery of these projects, the instigation of these projects, the design of these projects. And how do we persuade central government to trust local government? It's by ensuring, and I put this in my paper, I think, it's by ensuring that every person in the senior civil service, in order to get into the senior civil service, you have to have spent a period of time in a mayoralty or in local government. If you did that, you would be surprised how much faster and more effectively a lot of stuff is done.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Bim. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do questions in groups of 3 because I want to get through a lot of people. So I'm going to come to you, sir, first, then just behind you, and then to the lady in white there. You, sir, first. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Nick Puntis. I'm a Wiltshire councillor and prospective parliamentary candidate for Chippenham. Question. Wiltshire is a rural county.
Is Chippenham up? Has it been announced?
It is. It is indeed. So we're a rural county, and touching on a couple of things you've just said, Corsham Railway Station, Royal Wootton Bassett Railway Station, relieving all the people that go from Royal Wootton Bassett to Swindon and can't park to go into their railway station, for example. We need those types of infrastructure projects being approved from central government and, as you say, delivered from local government. But my question more specifically to whoever is most placed to answer this is, where does levelling up go to the rural communities, not just Wiltshire, across the country? Clearly, I'm more interested in Wiltshire as a rural county.
So we've got rural levelling up. Great. Really good question, Nick. Then just behind you. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Mary Page and I'm currently working for Jobs 22. We're delivering government restart scheme for getting the long-term unemployed into work. So I've got a question around that, but also something around Bim said about the devolution agenda. So in terms of that, giving the poorest in society a hand up, not a handout, what next for Restart? Because that finishes next year. You know, what could levelling up add to that agenda? And then with my political hat on, I'm the woman who helped to orchestrate the removal of the spare mayor of Bristol. So we now have an opportunity where we have the regional mayor, but the city council going to a committee system. How can we best utilise that committee system to deliver a levelling up agenda?
Okay, future of Restart on the committee system in local government. Great. Third of 3. Thank you.
Completely different end of the spectrum, but my name is Isabella Jack. I'm a Year 12 A-level student. My question is, how would levelling up address quality of education as it is the heart of new talents and equality of opportunity?
Okay, so an education-focused question. Should we go to Ben first? Should we go to Sam first, actually? Do you want to tackle the local government one first, Sam? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll try and give it a go.
Ruralities.
Yeah. So I guess the premise, and I'm referring back to the gentleman at the front who was referring to East-West Germany and that disparities. And actually, within the United Kingdom, we refer to that disparities we see across with the North-South and the Red Wall. But actually, if we look at those basics, if we look at Sussex with Hastings, actually their demographics and poverty level are 20% higher than if we look up into Ribble Valley in Lancashire. So actually for us, it's not necessarily about geography. It comes back to how are those individuals having that pride of place and that expectation of where they see their future going. And it's making sure that, back to the young lady, that we're growing those skills locally and work with primary schools now, to make sure they understand where those opportunities are for them in 10 years' time, making sure that we're managing those expectations in a rural locality, that they're all going to become football players, they're not all going to become beauticians, that actually there are some fantastic jobs in the agri sector, in the digital sector, in the green sector, in our rural localities. So how are we ensuring that they're seeing what those aspirations look like? Then twin tracking that with good, affordable housing and making sure that we've got good, strong local plans, giving those powers back to us as local authorities and our local communities, something which Michael wants through the Levelling Up Bill, ensuring that those planning inspectors down in the southwest aren't being those dictators around what we should be developing. Because, of course, localism, we know our place is best. And then, of course, back to the position around access to good public transport. For us, we've got to make sure that all of those individuals in our rural villages getting into those market towns and those bigger cities and urban conurbations have good access to affordable transport. And it's not just around road and buses, it's also those walking and cycling pieces, making sure that on those rural lanes we've got good access and linking all of those areas to our local service centres. But in turn, making sure that all of them are seeing what their futures can look like, but it's being driven by them locally, because they've got to own it. We've got to make sure that we're making those big, bold decisions as politicians, whether it's councillors or MPs, but actually those communities understand the benefit realisation of some of the things we're trying to achieve through that process.
Can I suggest
Thank you, Sam. Yes.
so
Catherine.
very briefly, I can't, it might be interesting to pull the exact stat of how many times the Restoring Your Railways Fund was overbid. Very early on in the Parliament. Admittedly, our focus on the pandemic, kind of took away both opportunity and scale for that. But I don't think that was just red wall, east-west connectivity. I think that was having tried to get to Royal Wootton Bassett from Lancashire during the summer, I drove. I think there is a recognition of that. And I'd like to see us maybe think more broadly, whilst we're devolving, about creating those smaller scale schemes. Because at the moment, there is a bit of a thermocline between, like a big jagged edge between what the scale of jobs that county councils or mayoralties or unitary authorities can deliver, and then the scale of jobs that, like, for example, the Department of Transport look at, which is HS2, Dartford Crossing, etc. And there is a big gap in the middle. And I would like to see central government start to close that gap with more schemes akin to Restoring Your Railway that create a blueprint model that can then be handed out to the greater devolution areas, because it's that 25 to 150 million pound scheme that we can't really deliver brilliantly at the moment. And I think that's our big opportunity area. No, I'm going to use Midge Hall railway station in my patch bill. Thanks very much. The train stops, you just can't get off it. Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. Jane wants to come in, I think.
Thank you. On long-term unemployment, which is one of my huge problems in Wolverhampton, when I go to my job centre, I'm told about families where no one has ever worked. They don't expect them to ever work. And getting people out of that rut and that perpetual disadvantage that they are keeping themselves and their children in is really depressing to see. We have got some initiatives in the last couple of years, community shop, and it was one of the big society centres called WV10, a big venture centre. They're doing amazing work, but one of the saddest things I saw, Michael Gove came with me to the big venture and spoke to the people who were running it. They are now providing men's mental health support because they're meeting men who feel they've entirely failed in being the leader of their household. And those ingrained societal norms in those areas are going to be really, really difficult to challenge. It comes back to something Isabella was talking about, which is education. So providing training opportunities. Catherine mentioned the lifelong skills guarantee. These all are really important. The Kickstart programme was a game changer. The SWAP scheme, the sector work academy placement, I can never remember what SWAP stands for, but it's marvellous. I've seen the difference that has made in Wolverhampton and getting people into jobs, into new sectors, all of those things. They can't be underestimated. And I think education, as we heard earlier, we are seeing a difference in our schools. Wolverhampton's success rate for schools and the outputs were really poor. And with academies coming in, we are seeing distinct improvements there, which I'm delighted as the daughter of a teacher. That makes me especially happy. But I think the ability as the labour market needs to be more flexible, and it's not going to stay in the same place. And certainly people of your generation are not going to have one job for the rest of their lives. We are all going to be able to need access to training as we go through our lives. And I think that is so important to levelling up and having that access.
Yes, Catherine.
So, and just on the education point, I think don't underestimate the value of T levels in levelling up so readily. So my dad left school with no qualifications and he went to night school at Bolton College and got engineering qualifications whilst working and earning because that was his situation in life. And over the 40, 50 years since we allowed that to drift away, and the transfer back into T levels where you can earn and learn a skill and don't have to go down a primary academic route makes a big difference if you're from a family where you need money now.
Right, let's take another trio. Unless, Bim, you wanted us just a bombo or
I know.
two?
Okay, no, I'll wait for the others.
Good,
I'll
is
wait.
the right answer. Now we're going to go to the back of the room. I've got a gentleman directly in front of me there. Yes, that you'll be the first one of three. Hold on. Yes, you're the first one. Let me go. Yes, sir. I can see you there. Yes, I'll come to the front. So one of three, two, and then three. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much for an excellent event this evening for everyone involved. And just picking up, my name's Steve Murphy. I'm the CEO for MTR in the UK. Firstly, thanks very much to the gentleman at the front. Very kind comments about the Elizabeth line, which we're very proud to operate, so thank you. And we are seeing dramatic improvements, I think a lot of people are, to levelling up within London from the Elizabeth line, which is great to see. But I also wanted to endorse the general point. You might think I would say this as a railwayman, but the impact of good railway and transport, wider transport investment in levelling up is really practical. I've seen it throughout my career. But there was a further element that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, which is what good transport investment does whilst it's levelling up is also increase dramatic improvements in prosperity, land values and air values around railway infrastructure. And this is something that the rest of the world is capitalising on very effectively to fund their investment. And so I think there's a big opportunity there. And with our partners at Cllr, we are very keen, for example, we've got a scheme at Liverpool Street where we capitalise on the benefit of Liverpool Street being such a huge economic hub with very good transport to say when that station needs to be redeveloped, which it desperately does, let's not do the traditional thing of asking central government to finance about £500 million worth of investment. Actually, the private sector can do that. And I think that's a model, if we can make it happen, and we're in for planning at the moment, if anyone wants to support it, gratefully received, we would like to see taken much more widely. So levelling up, yes, but also creating that platform for investment. Thank you.
Quite right. Absolutely right, if I may say so. It cannot all be done by government. We need the private sector. We need to trust the private sector, provide those that ground upon which we can irrigate. I think was the word that Michael used. I think is absolutely right. Yes, sir.
Paul Batchelor, UCLan and UCL. What we're discussing, I think, here are various outputs of programs to address levelling up. What I'm interested in is what is the outcome? When is success of levelling up actually achieved? Because at the moment, and certainly over the last 10 or so years, the outcome of people's lives is a growing inequality. How will this process actually begin to demonstrate that improvements are happening?
Great question, sir. Thank you. We're going to come right down the front.
Hi, it's Aisha from Leeds, University of Leeds. My question is to do with population health. We've got Born in Bradford, which is an internationally recognised study, and it specifically looks at children who are born in Bradford who have 20 years less healthy life expectancy and have amongst like a lot, the highest childhood illnesses in the world. So how can we use levelling up to improve health outcomes for a whole city where the children just are not expected to have good health past 50. So we talk a lot about economics, and we talk about a lot about, skills and health, how.
Okay, see if I can remember all these. First, education. So the best way of us having a better education system and educational opportunities for you is to have more high-paying, high-skill, high-quality jobs near where you live. That's the best way you do that. The government has done a lot of good work around the lifetime skills guarantee, around improved options for apprenticeships, and lots of other things. They matter, those need to continue, but unless you can access a high-quality job near your house, a good outcome for you, if you live in large parts of the UK, is to get your education and run to the south. That isn't where we need to be, right? So that's what we need to do. On your point about rural connectivity, sir, from Wiltshire, frankly, this isn't the only thing, but there are two big things. One is broadband and fast broadband and making that ubiquitous everywhere all the time reliably, because it will mean that large numbers of people can set up their own businesses, companies can employ people who have the right skills. I mean, one thing that I'm not sure if people have really cottoned on to, but in a world where people are working much more remotely, we actually as a country have a much tougher job in being competitive, not an easier one. Because we're not, if you live in Hitchin, for example, in my constituency, you're not, if you're working remotely from Hitchin, your company can hire somebody from Hyderabad, right? If you're going to work remotely. So actually, this is of real significance. So we need to make sure that all of our people can compete all over the country. And though we've made huge strides on broadband, it's not good enough yet. That's one thing we can do. The second thing we can do, and I'm surprised, interestingly, it hasn't come up more this evening, it's only come up obliquely, is housing. And beyond everybody saying, yes, we need more housing, what I'm afraid everybody has to recognize is more housing needs to be put somewhere. And there are two ways in which we do that. One is we need to densify our towns and cities. It makes me weep when I see certain colleagues on both sides of the House in centre of major cities who complain and campaign against, more development inside cities. It's a city. If we can, the point of cities is that we can have as many people as productively and healthily and happily living close together, because that actually improves the economic vitality of the city as long as they're healthy and want to be there, not reduces it. So that's another thing we need to do, and in addition to building more social housing everywhere. And the point that the gentleman made about railways, completely agree. Another thing we haven't talked about this evening is the cost. At the moment, railways are carrying a greater subsidy from the public than they did, say, 5-6 years ago, because fewer people are travelling by rail compared to pre-COVID. I'm afraid we're going to have to tackle this problem because the Treasury is not going to continue funding that. And I'm looking at Robert, who has had many battles with the Treasury over the years. They are not going to continue funding it. Right. No, I agree. I'm just making the point that we are going to have to think of ways of financing that. One way in which we can finance that and the things you're talking about in terms of developing Liverpool Street and other places is land value capture. I wrote about this in 2018, and actually Michael completely agrees with it as well. What we need to do is, if you are a landowner and you own an acre of agricultural land in, I don't know, Lower Stondon, just outside my constituency, if you do own it, this is for you. If it's allocated for planning, it goes from, I don't know, 20,000 or 30,000 pounds an acre to over £1 million. Now, that landowner captures all of that benefit, and then what we seek to do is we say, okay, to the housing developer, okay, you now need to pay for roads and whatever. And the housing developer can pay for some, but guess what happens to that cost? That goes right onto the cost of the houses that we build. What we need to be doing is capturing more of that uplift for the public purse, not for the Treasury in London, but for the community there that needs the infrastructure, needs the roads, needs the GP surgeries. We need to do some of that. And it's just blindingly obvious that that is one way in which we can capture value for the community, and the landowners will still end up very successful as a result. And the last thing I'll say is, when do we know when it's successful? The truth is you never do. these things are continuing projects. A country like Germany, which the gentleman was talking about earlier, Germany is still talking about the integration of East and West Germany, and I suspect they'll be talking about it in 50 years. These things are generational projects, but that's not an excuse. We've got to begin.
Thank you, Bim. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I'm going to bring really, I agree with every word. Sam, do you want to come in?
Yeah, great, thanks. So just talking around young people and the challenges they're facing, and you're absolutely right, it isn't just around economics, good access to jobs and everything else. It's those statutory levers which local authorities and councils have around good standards of open spaces for all of those individuals to enjoy, good affordable access to leisure facilities so that they can go and enjoy themselves, working with the third sector to make sure all of those enablers are supporting those communities when they need it most. But of course, providing that safe, secure accommodation and homes which everybody needs. And we need to make sure that whether they're owned privately or whether they're owned by the local authority, that we're doing everything we can to make sure that those individuals haven't got damp and mould and have got good access to utilities within those localities, haven't got overcrowding. The challenge we face in local government, and those councillors are in the room, is that our resources are finite. And sadly, we can't invest the time we should be doing to protect those individuals because we're just trying to keep our head above water. So through the process of levelling up, we need to make sure that we're really clear what our position is and what we want to do with our communities. Twin tracking and allowing those individuals working in partnership, they can go off and deliver skills. These guys can go off and do the economy, but we're all going to keep coming together and talking about it. And we here as the Housing Authority are going to do everything we can to make sure we're looking after our community and our residents to provide that safe, secure accommodation, because it's not acceptable. And we've seen recently some of the interventions Michael's made to try and improve that. But we need to go further. We need to see some of those individuals brought to task and making sure that me as a local council leader, are using all of those powers to do so. In relation to what Bim said, success for levelling up is a continuous. I don't think any of us in our lifetime will ever see that, and I think we will always have that capacity within the United Kingdom to continuously strive for success, and we've got to make sure that everybody across the UK sees those wider opportunities. And that was it. Thanks, Robert.
Very much. Now I'm going to ask me a question, but it's actually a prepared question, which I'm very grateful to Anita Dockley from the Howard League. She asked this: engagement with the criminal justice system has significant impacts on individuals and communities' futures. Why has it been largely absent from the levelling up debate agenda, and how would you seek to incorporate it in the future? Well, I've got good news. Because looking at that annex, again, to the white paper, you will see in there key metrics about the reduction in homicide and reductions in knife crime, the sort of criminal justice impacts that really make a difference to communities. Because I felt very strongly when I was in government that every department was a criminal justice department, whether it was education, whether it was health, whether it was DULUC, whether it was social care, because I can tell you that failure by policymakers in those key areas will lead to the most baleful effects downstream at a great cost, not just to our treasury, but a cost in lives. And if we don't get the basics right at the beginning with the right interventions, then we are asking for trouble when it comes to an overcrowded prison system, a criminal justice system that is creaking at the seams, and a probation service that is clearing up the mess. Now, levelling up has to be about dealing with that. Otherwise, frankly, we will have failed. To answer the second of those three questions, it's in the metrics. There are very clear metrics here which are time limited to the end of the decade. So this isn't some, airy waffle from the department. This is themselves setting a very hard test against which they can be measured, and against which I'm sure we will all measure them. Now, we've just come up to the witching hour, I'm afraid, once again, and time has flown by with our excellent panel of passionate and inspired speakers from both local and central government. Can I lead our appreciation of their contribution in the usual way? And here it is, Levelling Up 2.0, available in all good bookshops, online and whatever. I don't get any commission for this whatsoever. And now I'm getting away from the lectern.